I like to be a Sherlock Holmes, and I like to figure out what's causing what, and then work in a very systematic way to address that area of concern. And it's never usually one thing. It's usually a multitude of things. That's the challenge of doing work in fall risk reduction, is nobody's falling for the same reason. There isn't one reason why you're falling.
On the balance issue, how does the prescriptions, does that affect that balance? I've found that to be true for me.
We know what one medication does in terms of a side effect, and we know that there are a number of medications that have very negative side effects for balance. And I call them, well, we call them the benzodiazepine category, but they're the ones that we take to elevate our mood, so our antidepressants, the anti-anxiolytics, the ones to lower our anxiety, because sometimes getting older can be stressful and it can make us anxious, and we tend to lose people around us that we really loved, and that can be a stressful experience. And also the sedative hypnotics, trouble sleeping. They're the whammies. They're the ones that we work very, very hard to monitor and manage. Now, imagine if you were taking an antidepressant, an anxiolytic, and a sedative hypnotic, which several of my clients do. We know that it doesn't matter what medication you're taking, that if you take 4 or more medications, over the counter or under the counter, it doesn't matter, that we significantly increase our risk for falls. It's a fact. So how do we offset that risk? Well, we work with our primary care physician or our multiple physicians so that everybody knows what we're taking. And how many of you have more than one physician in your life? Do they all know what you're taking? Does every single one of them know what medication you're taking? Everybody has to be on the same page. And the other problem is, what we know with older adults is that oftentimes, occasionally they're overtreated or they're undertreated. So they're either not getting enough medication, or more often than not, they're getting too much. Because as we get older, we don't metabolize medications as well as we did when we were younger. So the dose needs to be adjusted to accommodate to those changes in metabolic changes. So the thing I teach my clients to do is don't deal with adverse effects of medications. As soon as you start to experience those, you make sure your primary care physician or whichever physician prescribed that particular medication knows that you're experiencing those. And a lot of people will suffer through it, and it doesn't actually get better. And so I put it back in the hands of the physician to say, well, do you think I'm on the right dose? Is there an alternative medication that I could take that may not cause these side effects? I already have balance problems. I don't need them to be exacerbated by the medications that you're prescribing.
Also, make sure that your pharmacist has all your prescriptions, supplements, over-the-counter, herbs, everything, in order to check for the contradictions.
Yeah, and if you use always the same pharmacist and all of your medications are going into the same pharmacy, then that's there. It's all there. We've moved to electronic records. But our pharmacists are a really good filter, but they oftentimes don't know all that we need to know about the interacting effects of medications. Nobody really knows that. We know what each individual medication is, but we don't know what the additive effect of taking multiple medications is on the side effects. But again, be your own Sherlock Holmes. You know, everything was going well until you started taking this medication. And the medication in and of itself may be perfectly fine for you, but when it's mixed with medication A, B, and C, it's no longer fine for you, because now it's creating this additive effect. So one of the things I train my clients to be is their own best advocate. And you know, we pay a good amount of money for health care in this country. We want to make sure we get the best health care that we can. Unfortunately, I don't know if the case is true in Iowa, but in Orange County, our geriatrician population is rapidly declining. So we do not have primary care physicians that are really trained to understand older adult issues. And so actually there's an initiative coming out of the University of California, Irvine, where they're now training primary care physicians in geriatric medicine. I hate the word geriatric, but that's what they use. It's all over the country, and that's really unfortunate because geriatricians are trained in a particular way. They understand older adult issues. So once you start working with primary care physicians who have absolutely no background in the aging process, they don't get it right very often. So you have to be the ones to help them get it right because you know your bodies and you know what's causing the problems.
I had a doctor for 40 years that I just love, and now I've been trying to find somebody to replace him, and they just can't hardly wait to get out of the room. The new doctors need to take lessons from the old ones that always had a pat on the back for you or a smile and the time to listen.
My answer to that is train your doctor. When I first went to this doctor, I was always tugging at his coat as he was heading out the door and saying, "I'm not finished." And so then I started making an agenda or a list for him, and now he says, "Are we finished now?"
And that's a very, very good plan to go in there with an agenda. And here's my agenda, and we're going to start at number 1, and we're going to get to number 10, or whatever, how long that agenda is. But a lot of older adults hold their primary care physicians up as the omnipotent one. And so they're very fearful to go in and say anything. And that's problematic too, because you have to take care of your own health. Regaining your balance is a skill. It's not a reflex. It's a very complex sensory motor skill. And if you don't practice losing your balance, you lose the skill of regaining your balance. So how do you do it safely? Well, we have a number of research labs in this country that put older adults on treadmills, and they put them, fortunately, in an overhead harness. And what they do is they actively perturb them. So they make the belt move unsuspectingly underneath them. And they actually do what's called perturbation training. And they find quite remarkable results from doing that. Now, I'm not telling you all to go out and do perturbation training, but what that research tells us is that if you don't ever practice losing balance in a safe, well-supervised environment, you lose the skill of regaining balance. My philosophy is you start losing your balance when you stop working on it. There is no quick fix to improving your balance. It is a lifelong endeavor. So just as we go in and we work the heart muscle, and just as we go in and we work the muscles to strengthen ourselves, we need to work on balance every day. Doesn't take long. You've all learned some wonderful activities through stepping on and matter of balance. And they're simple things that can be practiced on a daily basis, safely. And I'm assuming you learned all the safety techniques for doing these things by yourself at home. So I practice balance every day. And my philosophy is that you start to lose balance when you don't work on it. And challenge it. Challenge your balance. So if you don't allow yourself to be in environments where your balance is challenged, that might be walking across the park on a grassy surface. You say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay on that asphalt because, I could trip and fall." So we start to already project that if we do this, bad things will happen. And so we stop doing it. And so that narrows our opportunities to practice our balance. My philosophy with the home environment is that you want it to be as safe and as functional as it can be. And so it's not just about making the physical environment safe, it's about you evaluating how you use that environment. And so what we teach a lot of our clients to do is not only to think about the physical surroundings, where to put those grab bars in the bathroom. So part of it is the logistics of how do you use your home? And if you find troubled areas in your home and say, "Well, I don't feel comfortable when I'm in that environment," evaluate it and say, "Why don't I feel comfortable in that environment? Is it because of the lack of safety in that environment, or is it the way I'm using it?" So a lot of it is being very mindful about your environment, but not just the environment itself, how you're using it. And if you're not going into parts of your home because you don't feel steady or safe, then that's your wake-up call that, I maybe need to get somebody out to check this out and see why I may not be using it or why I may not feel comfortable going into it.